Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Um, we're in Matthew chapter 8, and this is Christmas Eve. So while I know a lot of people are busy with the Christmas preparations, I know that there may be some people who are not busy. So that's why I'm still doing the Bible study, the daily Bible study. I might even do it on Christmas for the same reasons. And I'm going to probably get more into this on the Tuesday night Bible study, which I will do. I'll explain a little more why I, you know, there may be people out there that just they want a Bible study, um, need a Bible study. So this is why I am here. Um, so with that, uh, let's get into it. And I'm gonna okay. So let's get into it. Pull up my screen. Matthew chapter 8. Um, oh, verse 18. So we left off with the Jesus um healing. Well, we were introduced, not so much introduced, but you had Peter, you had Jesus healing Peter's mother. You also had him healing the centurion who amazed Jesus with his faith, which Jesus said was the greatest faith. He said he has not seen great faith, this kind of great faith in Israel. That's a testament to the centurion, who was a Roman soldier. I kind of forgot to mention that he was a Roman soldier, and he probably could have commanded a large squad of people. And it depends on, like a legion, and we're going to see this later on, but a legion with a number around 2,000. And Jesus was impressed with him because of his observation. He said, Jesus, could you come and heal my servant? And there was a couple of things. I think I don't know why I kind of missed that. I shouldn't have. Let me kind of go back for a moment because there was a couple of things I missed, and I uh, wondering why I did. But when he had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, pleading with him, Lord, my servant is lying at home, paralyzed in a terrible way. Now, excuse me. So there's a couple of things about, and I mentioned this last time about translations. I'm not going to rehash it, but the word servant enslaves the way translators translate them. Now, when he says servant here, I kind of think this would probably be a better translation of slave, the way how they're using this word slave than translated. And in other words, the idea of a slave under Roman times were, I believe it's up to a third of the population were slaves. And like a lot of slavery, they did not have rights. They were owned by people. Uh, and of course, slavery, as you know, the sin has been around since man fell into sin. And, you know, um, we relate to the transatlantic slave. Okay. And I'll mention what's the difference. But slavery's been a part of man's sinful nature. In fact, so much so when you read in the book of Revelation, that was one of the sins listed that God is going to judge mankind on. And pretty much, especially if you go back in history and even in the present, there's slavery going on right now. That if you are the weaker people, you got conquered, you were slaves. And again, you had no rights. And that's the difference. You had no rights. And so, and what makes this story then compelling, oh, let me just say this, because I'm not going to go deep into this, but the difference in the transatlantic slavery was that that was the first time in history where a race or an ethnicity was targeted. That's the difference. Like here, there was no ethnicity involved. In other words, he wasn't a slave because he was black or Hispanic or Native American or Asian, right? He wasn't a slave because of that. They were slaves because they got conquered or for whatever other reasons. And the transatlantic slave, what made that evil worse was they targeted a specific group of people. All right. So what makes this story interesting is the centurion's love for his slave, that he came to Jesus and asked. Now, in other some of the other gospels, they're going to show that the centurion personally did not come, but as you will see in gospel stories, a representative could represent um, a person that they're sent, just like angels. Angels are messengers, and thus, what's more important, like for example, if Gabriel was to show up, you don't see a lot. You don't see, at least you don't see Gabriel drawing attention to himself. He is there to deliver the message of the Lord. Now, obviously, if he was to show up, we would certainly be drawn to the brightness. Okay, we would be struck by awe. But the most important thing would be the word of the Lord. So we'll see that in the other gospels, how that here when it says the centurion came to him, well, it was through his messenger that he came to him. And then it says, pleading with him, he says, Lord, my servant is lying at home, paralyzed and in terrible agony. So the fact that he cared for his slave, now here they call him a servant, okay? Now the difference in a slave and a servant, as they are using the term, a servant is and could be someone that is bound in servitude to someone. It could be debt related. Um, um, and like I say, I'm not the scholars. I kind of told you in terms of, I do like the Holman Christian Standard the translation here, but like any other translators, if you use the term slave or servant, it's kind of pretty much the same, because pretty much they did not have rights. They did not have ownership of their person. Okay, so the value that was placed on a servant was that of property. He's gone a step further to say he is at home. He's paralyzed. He's in terrible agony, and he cared for this slave. Now, one other thing, there is in the New Testament, you will see the writers of the New Testament, the apostles, refer to themselves as bond slaves of Jesus. Okay? And a bond slave was a person that even if they could go free because they loved their master so, they they would swear eternal servitude to their master. They would surrender their will to the will of their master. That's why, and what they would do is to seal that, they would take them to the official, then they would, under the Jewish customs anyway, pierce his ear, and that signified, I'm a bond slave for life. Okay, so that's why this story is very interesting, because of the care that his master is giving him. The other thing is, so this, as a centurion, he says, look, I'm not worthy for you to come. So again, the picture here, when we read it, as Matthew was telling him, that he came and then he stopped him. And that kind of, again, that's not so much the bigger picture, is that he sent his servants, and as a representative, when they spoke in his stead. And so then he said, so then they said, the centurion replied, I'm not worthy for you to come under my roof. And then the idea here is, notice what he says, I because the authority I have, I recognize you have greater authority. Now watch this. I say to my servant, you go, and he goes. I say to my servant, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and they do it. I recognize that I have that authority. Now watch this. What I don't have authority is I can't speak healing to my beloved servant, but I know you can. And that's why Jesus said in verse 10, I assure you, I've not found anyone in Israel with so great a faith. Okay. So, let me skip down to verse 18. He says that when Jesus saw the large crowds around him, he gave orders to go to the other side of the sea. A scribe approached him and said, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. Now get that. I will follow you wherever you go. Jesus told him, foxes have dens and the birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Now you notice Jesus refers to himself as the Son of Man. The term Son of Man simply means, and by the way, this is an acknowledgement of Jesus' humanity. Because you see the same phrase in the, for example, if you go to the book of Ezekiel, you'll see this phrase used a lot of God referring to Ezekiel as the Son of Man. Okay. So notice Jesus responds that he said, I'll follow you wherever you go. And he says, okay, fine. I don't have anywhere to lay my head. Now, when Jesus says this, oftentimes, does this mean that Jesus was poor? Excuse me, homeless? The answer is no. But I think in context, we have to say that Jesus did not come to accumulate wealth. He certainly could have. He certainly did not come as a lot of prosperity. I'm not going to use the term prosperity. That's too confining. Because many ministers get caught up with big ministries. And many ministers, they get caught up with the fame. And so the money is good. Like when you watch them on TV, you watch these television ministries on TV, some people will say, oh man, they're getting rich off of being on TV. That's, you missed the point there. The television or radio, I wonder, do they even have radio ministries? Well, certainly podcasts. You know, a lot of things to shift. That is interesting. I just never thought about it because I never tune into radio anymore. That's kind of interesting. Just a question at this point. But yeah, they do. I'm sorry, they do, because you know what? Sometimes when I'm in my car, I listen to the radio. So, but anyway, but understand this, that the television and radio, and you can only say now with the social media, those are marketing. They are marketing platforms. They could be used for marketing platforms. So they don't get. In other words, they're not getting rich off of that. What they get rich off of is the money that you send in, the invitations that they receive. Okay. Now Jesus is saying here that he did not come to settle down, have a family, house, farm, right? He didn't go into office, political office or something like that. So as he was traveling, now it's interesting because he did have a home. His home base was Capernaum, and he grew up in Nazareth. And so oftentimes he would return to Capernaum. So, but when he would travel, oftentimes people would house Jesus. They would support Jesus. So in a sense, that was, in a sense, standard ministry where Jesus would receive offerings. People supported him. So he said the foxes and the dens have, he says foxes have dens, the birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man had no place to lay his head. Meaning ownership. Okay, so if you want to follow me, notice he said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." Fine. I don't have any place to live. We're not going to be staying in the 5-star hotels. Okay. Verse 21. Lord, another disciple said, "First, let me go and bury my father." But Jesus told him, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." Now, this is a very, you can say, shocking statement, because what did he mean by this? Right? In other words, was Jesus denying bereavement leave? Now, of course, the guy wasn't in service with Jesus, but so what did Jesus mean by that? And here's the thing. This is one of the statements, and Jesus is going to make many of them. He doesn't need or desire or want these kind of silly excuses that people come up with. What is interesting is that when Jesus said this, he said, "I will follow you, Jesus, but let me go bury my father." So what did he mean by this? That, and a lot of people kind of debate this, and because Jesus did not give there's no, in other words, even sometimes, like Matthew in this case would sometimes narrate or commentate, he would give us some kind of notes to what is meant here. He doesn't here, so we're left with speculation. So I'm not going to go too far into speculation, but it may look like that what he's talking about is there could be some inheritance involved. Was his father on his deathbed, right? And then was Jesus then saying to him, "Let the dead bury their own dead"? Or let's see. I don't want to get too far off in speculation because he doesn't. Again, the text itself doesn't give us one. But the idea was that the man was like, "Let me take care of this for whatever reason, and then I'll get back to you, Jesus." And Jesus certainly was like, "Nah, not having it." Okay, not having it, not having it. uh, so, so he said, "Let the dead bury their own dead." So, now was Jesus referring here to the spiritually dead? And that's kind of interesting. So again, this statement here is not explicitly explained. Okay, let the dead bury their own dead. The idea, he said, but notice this, but Jesus told him, "Follow me." Okay, follow me. Now let me tell you why I don't think that Jesus was saying, like, here's a good example. I don't believe that what Jesus was referring here to was that his father was actually, let's say, terminal, had a terminal, and it was on his deathbed, right? When he says, but Jesus told him, "Follow me." Now that's interesting because remember, this is the command that he gave to all of his disciples. Follow me. So keep that in mind. When he said to Peter and James, Peter and Andrew and James and John, "Follow me." That's exactly what they did. They left their fishing nets. James and John left their James left their uh, uh, James left their. Oh, did I miss this here? Oh, all right. What the? All right, hold on, guys. All right, it keeps My phone keeps ringing here. All right, let me get back to this. I'm actually kind of out of time anyway. So he says here, when he's verse 22, he says, "Follow me, and let the dead bury their own dead." Right now, notice the term "follow me." I don't believe that. Excuse me. I don't believe that this was referring to the guy on his deathbed. And this is why I want you. This is why I want to say this, because in the book of John, in the 11th chapter, Jesus responds to. Did I have this? Oh, here we go. Jesus responds to Lazarus, and not only that, he responds to Lazarus, and came and raised him from the dead. Okay, he responds to Lazarus, raising him from the dead. So I don't believe that Jesus was being hard and callous, when he said, "Let the dead bury their dead." But more so, I think the people, the guys, his kind of, to me, response to like, "Okay, Jesus, I'll follow you, but let me first take care of this. Let me. So anyway, that's just, again, it's a statement, and I'll say this in closing. However, Jesus demands non-negotiable. He demands total surrender, total commitment, total devotion to him above anyone, period. And that's non-negotiable. Okay, and we'll talk about that more in the next study. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought, a comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. And also, don't forget to subscribe to BP, the Bible Plain and Simple. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next study.